Hi everyone, welcome back to Pages of the Globe. Today I'm going to be reading to you the short story, Thank You Ma'am, by Langston Hughes. Before we start, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the author and what his influence was. Langston Hughes is a very prominent author. He was a central figure in the Harlem Renaissance, the flowering of Black intellectual, literary, and artistic life that took place in the 1920s in a number of American cities, particularly Harlem, which is in New York. He was a major poet, and he wrote novels, short stories, essays, and plays. He sought honestly to portray the joys and hardships of working class, specifically Black lives, and he tried to avoid the sentimental idealization and negative stereotypes. He once wrote in his essay, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, we younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful and ugly too. During that time, there were so many stereotypical, at least stereotypes about Black people. You would see so many comedians do blackface and just constantly put this kind of uneducated, illiterate, there just to work and almost just slave around Black person. That was kind of the stereotype. And what the Harlem Renaissance was trying to do was just defeat that completely and show how there was actually so much, there were so many young geniuses in the African American community. There was so much literary to show off, and there was so much music and dances, and so many things came out of the Harlem Renaissance that you might still recognize to this day. Hughes' early work was honestly very much criticized by many Black intellectuals for portraying what they thought to be an unattractive view of Black life. But Hughes just tried to convey that this was what happened. He wasn't trying to just show the good parts. Like I said before, he was really trying to kind of avoid that sentimental idolization and at the same time, all those negative stereotypes. What first kind of set him apart, or honestly his debut into the writing world, was published in 1921 in The Crisis of The Negro Speaks Rivers, which was his basically signature poem and was collected in his first book of poetry, The Weary Blues, published in 1926. His first and last published poems appeared in The Crisis, and more of his poems were published in The Crisis than any other journal. His life and work were enormously influential, as I said before, during the Harlem Renaissance, along those of his contemporaries Nora Neale Hurthson, Wallace Thurman, Claude McKay, County Cullen, Richard Bruce Nugent, and Aaron Douglas. They all kind of worked together to create the short-lived magazine, other than McKay, of course. They did work together to kind of create the magazine Fire, devoted to the younger Negro artists. Hughes was very, very passionate about kind of setting an example for the younger Negro artists, and he just wanted to show the world how truly, how much genius they had in them and ingenuity and how much they could actually provide for the world. He had so many different goals and aspirations than the Black middle class, and he and all of his fellows kind of tried to depict the low life in their art, which was the real lives of Blacks in the lower socioeconomic strata. They criticized the divisions and prejudices within the Black community itself based on skin color and colorism. You can, when he was writing the essay, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, published in The Nation, 1926, he talked a lot about the issues they had in their own community and how that kind of portrayed itself to specifically white people. His poetry and fiction often portray the lives of working class Blacks in America, and you will see that in Thank You Ma'am, the short story. Thank You Ma'am is an enormously famous short story. It's often taught in many American middle schools, and it's very, very influential as it's very short, but it has a very powerful message. In the short story, it's just to give you a very short overview. It's about a kid who tries to steal from a lady, but he's unable to do so. And instead of just reporting to the police or just telling him to get lost, she cares for him. And there is in most of his short stories, this doesn't really happen, but this short story has a very sympathetic, sentimental ending, but it does have a powerful message, and that's probably why it is so popular and taught in American education systems. Without further ado, let's get on with the story. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like to read next. Thank You, Ma'am by Langston Hughes. She was a large woman with a large purse that had everything in it but hammer and nails. It had a long strap, and she carried it slung across her shoulder. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and she was walking alone when a boy ran up behind her and tried to snatch her purse. The strap broke with a single tug the boy gave it from behind, but the boy's weight and the weight of the purse combined caused him to fall and lose his balance. So instead of taking off full blast as he had hoped, the boy fell on the back of the sidewalk, and his legs flew up. The large woman simply turned around and kicked him right square in his blue jean sitter. Then she reached down, picked the boy up from his shirt front, and shook him till his teeth rattled. After that, the woman said, "Pick up my pocketbook, boy, and give it here." She still held him, but she bent down enough to permit him to stoop and pick up her purse. Then she said, "Now ain't you ashamed of yourself?" Firmly gripped by his shirt front, the boy said, "Yes, ma'am." The woman said, "What did you do this for?" The boy said, "I didn't aim to." She said, "You lie." By that time, 2 or 3 people passed, stopped, and turned to look, and some stood watching. "If I turn you loose, will you run?" asked the woman. "Yes, ma'am," said the boy. "Then I won't turn you loose," said the woman. She did not release him. "I'm very sorry, lady, I'm very sorry," whispered the boy. And your face is dirty. I got a great mind to wash your face for you. Ain't you got nobody home to tell you to wash your face?" "No, ma'am." "Then it will get washed this evening," said the large woman, starting up the street, dragging the frightened boy behind her. He looked as if he were 14 or 15, frail and willow-wild, in tennis shoes and blue jeans. The woman said, "You ought to be my son. I would teach you right from wrong. The least I can do right now is wash your face. Are you hungry?" "No, ma'am," said the being dragged boy. "I just want you to turn me loose." "Was I bothering you when I turned that corner?" asked the woman. "No, ma'am." "But you put yourself in contact with me," said the woman. "If you think that contact is not going to last a while, you got another thought coming. When I get through with you, sir, you are going to remember Miss Luella Bates Washington Jones." Sweat popped out on the boy's face as he began to struggle. Miss Jones stopped, jerked him around in front of her, put a half Nelson about his neck, and continued to drag him up the street. When she got to her door, she dragged the boy inside down a hall and into a large kitchenette-furnished room at the rear of the house. She switched on the light and left the door open. The boy could hear the other roomers laughing and talking in the large house. Some had their doors open, too, so he knew he and the woman were not alone. The woman still had him by the neck in the middle of her room. "What is your name?" she said. "Roger," answered the boy. "Then, Roger, go to that sink and wash your face," said the woman, whereupon she turned him loose. At last, Roger looked at the door, looked at the woman, looked at the door, and went to the sink. "Let the water run till it gets warm," she said. "Here's a clean towel." "You're going to take me to jail?" asked the boy, bending over the sink. "Not with that face. I would not take you anywhere," said the woman. "Here I am trying to get home to cook me a bite to eat, and you snatched my pocketbook. Maybe you ain't been to your supper either, late as it be. Have you?" "There's nobody home at my house," said the boy. "Then we'll eat," said the woman. "I believe you're hungry, or been hungry to try and snatch my pocketbook." "I wanted a pair of blue suede shoes," said the boy. "Well, you didn't have to snatch my pocketbook to get some suede shoes," said Miss Luella Bates Washington Jones. "You could have asked me, ma'am." The water dripping from his face, the boy looked at her. There was a long pause, a very long pause. After he had dried his face, not knowing what else to do, dried it again. The boy turned around, wondering what was next. Their door was open. He could make a dash for it down the hall. He could run, and run. The woman was sitting on the daybed. After a while, she said, "I was young once, and I wanted things I could not get." There was a long pause. The boy's mouth opened. Then he frowned, but not knowing he frowned. The woman said, "You thought I was going to say, but, didn't you? You thought I was going to say, but I didn't snatch people's pocketbooks." Well, I wasn't going to say that. Pause. Silence. "I have done things too, which I would not tell you, son, neither tell God, if he didn't already know. So you sit down while I fix us something to eat. You might run that comb through your hair so you will look presentable." In another corner of the room, behind the screen, was a glass plate and an icebox. Miss Jones got up and went behind the screen. The woman did not watch the boy to see if he was going to run now, nor did she watch her purse, which she left behind on the daybed. The boy took care to sit on the far side of the room, where he thought she could easily see him out of the corner of his eye if she wanted to. He did not trust the woman to not trust him, and he did not want to be mistrusted now. "Do you need somebody to go to the store?" asked the boy. "Maybe to get some milk or something?" "Don't believe I do," said the woman, "unless you want sweet milk yourself. I was going to make cocoa out of this canned milk I got here." "That will be fine," said the boy. She heated up some lima beans and ham she had in the icebox, made the cocoa, set the table. The woman did not ask the boy anything about where he lived or his folks or anything that would embarrass him. Instead, as they ate, she told him about her job in a hotel beauty shop that stayed open late and what the work was like and how all kinds of women came in and out, blondes, redheads, and Spanish. Then she cut him half of her 10-cent cake. "Eat some more, son," she said. When they were finished eating, she got up and said, "Now here, take this $10 and buy yourself some blue suede shoes. And next time, do not make the mistake of latching onto my pocketbook nor anybody else's, because shoes come by devilish that will burn your feet. I got to get my rest now, but I wish you would behave yourself, son, from here on in." She led him down the hall to the front door and opened it. "Good night. Behave yourself, boy," she said, looking out into the streets. The boy wanted to say something other than "Thank you, ma'am," to Miss Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the barren stoop and looked out behind the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say "thank you" before she shut the door, and he never saw her again. The end. Okay, so that was "Thank You, Ma'am" by Langston Hughes. And just to give you a brief overview, even though I know you just read it, it's about a teenage boy that attempts to steal a woman's purse. And instead of reporting him or taking him to jail, once she catches him, she takes him back to her house or her home and kind of shows him some kindness and attempts to teach him right from wrong. Now, when this boy is actually stealing, she kicks him in the backside for shaking him vigorously, and she gets her purse back up from the ground, and you can tell she's automatically shown as a strong and independent woman rather than the stereotypes there were of the black mammy. She then asks if he's ashamed of himself for trying to rob her, and she kind of comments on how dirty his face is, and she kind of realizes that this boy is not taken care of at home. So instead of being okay, this is some poor guy that I need to get out of here immediately, she takes him back home to kind of wash his face and just show him some kindness. The boy is in the beginning "Oh my God, just let me go, you crazy woman," but she's "You're the one that imposed yourself on me, so you're gonna come sit here while I cook for you, and I'm gonna tell you what you did, why it was wrong." And she kind of comments how if the boy was her son, she would teach him right from wrong. And it isn't lie, he is not her son, but she still does end up trying to do that. And it just kind of shows how much kindness and sympathy she has in herself, even though she's kind of showing the tough love version of it. As the two of them talk, Miss Jones, the lady, learns that Roger was trying to buy some blue suede shoes, and she kind of tells him that she could have just asked him for it. And as they talk more and more, she shows how he had almost the same upbringing that maybe he did, and how she was often in the same life circumstances as he was, and how she kind of hints that she might have also stolen before, but now that's not something she could ever imagine herself doing. And because she had those life experiences, she can relate to Roger, and that's why she is showing him so much love. Now, in this very short story, Langston Hughes suggests that all teenagers who have fallen in the life of petty crime need is just someone to put them on the straight and narrow, and Miss Luella Bates Johnson does that for Roger. The story presents the details in very direct terms. Honestly, there's not a lot of hinting or foreshadowing, but the third person narrator rarely passes comments or providing extra detail, which can kind of help fill the gaps between the two. This means that the story contains some tantalizing or missing details, basically. And so Miss Luella Bates Johnson obviously got married at some point, but there's no sign of her husband, and she appears to live in a rented room in a larger house, which she shares with other people. It's not so we don't know if she's divorced, if her husband died, or if he's in jail, which may explain why she takes such an interest in Roger. She also does not appear to have any children of her own, but the way she acts towards Roger is very motherly, and it's if she had kids, they would be very lucky kids. The end of Thank You, Ma'am also leaves things kind of open to our own interpretation and analysis, because Roger is seemingly overwhelmed by the woman's kindness and clemency, and he feared that she was going to turn him over, but instead she actually gave him money to buy the shoes that he wanted. This is presumably why he is unable to say more than "thank you, ma'am" to his benefactress as he leaves her home. Now, obviously, like I said before, there are just so many, we don't know much about any of these characters. And honestly, Hughes doesn't even specify the ethnicities of the two characters. Giving Hughes depictions of African American life in Harlem, many readers can probably picture both of them as Black. So this arguably brings the two of them together, and that could be another reason as to why Miss Jones even Roger kind of caught her eye, because she was this is a young Black kid, and I know he needs my help. Thank You, Ma'am just kind of shows the kindness how kindness and understanding can help a youth who has fallen into bad ways to recover his or her moral honesty and integrity, and the ending of the story remains ambiguous concerning the long-term fate of its adolescent protagonist, but you can just kind of tell that Roger is a good kid. He's not necessarily purposely trying to get himself in trouble. He just needed a little help, and that's what Miss Luella Bates Johnson offered him. When I was talking before about Langston Hughes, I did explain how he rarely showed, he hated the Black stereotypes, and he was trying very hard to kind of come out of those, and you can see that in the story. In this story, Miss Luella Bates Johnson seems like an educated woman. She's holding down a job. She's serving good food. And Roger isn't just this, gangster kid off the streets who's, doing bad stuff. He genuinely needs money. He's maybe trying to fit in with other kids. He has his own issues. And you can just kind of see how he is, how his life may be, and how Miss Luella Bates Johnson helps him out of that. Well, that's it for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like to read next.